Right over here in the green, we have Miss Ada Smith.
So Ada is from Whitesburg, Kentucky, and she left the mountains to go up north and study at Hampshire College in Massachusetts, graduated in '09. Ada is a consummate activist. Is that close enough?
2 out of 10, that's close.
Okay, 1 year old. She's an activist, and it's difficult to list all of the social justice organizations and movements that she's been involved in, many of which I am also working with her in, and so is Sam. She's always moving and grooving is Ada Smith. Ada has worked extensively with Appalshop's Appalachia Media Institute, a media training program for Central Appalachian youth. She's one of the driving forces and founding members of the Stay Together Appalachian Youth Project, a regional youth leadership network established to create support for young Appalachians who wish to stay and work in their home communities. The Stay Project is particularly committed to making the mountains more welcoming for diverse Appalachians and has held annual LGBTQ youth gatherings for the past 2 years. The first one of those, I will have to add in here, was actually the first LGBTQ youth gathering in the region. Ada has worked with numerous efforts sponsored by the Highlander Research and Education Center in East Tennessee, High Rocks Education Corporation in West Virginia, but she does a great deal of her work right here in Eastern Kentucky. Some of you might remember last year she spoke out against mountaintop removal on the steps of the Capitol building in Frankfort for I Love Mountains Day. Y'all, please take a big, warm welcome, and let's bring our dearest Fabulation and good friend, the wild and lovely Miss Ada Smith.
Hi, y'all. My name's Ada, and just like Lou said, I'm so honored to be here with her and John, and so honored to be here with y'all and be invited to do this. And forgive me, I always get red and flustered when I talk in front of people. I'm really not that nervous. It's just a nerve reaction. As I said, I'm from a small town called Whitesburg, Kentucky, in Letcher County in the southeast corner of Kentucky. We're about 15 minutes away from Virginia. And it's the coal fields, and it's also, to me, this really amazing, beautiful town full of art and culture, and has actually been able in a variety of ways to really make a new life for itself because of that. I feel like it's really in a transitional spot, just as all the coal fields are. But I think what's been unique to me about Whitesburg is that I feel like the town has really tried to figure out what else is possible for our region, right? What else is possible for the people who live there and for our young people who want to stay, right? And so that's where a lot of my rootedness of who I am, how I identify, how I go about the world really comes from, is from where and who I grew up around, right? To me, that's always a place of strength. It's always been a place of really kind of driving where I go and what I want to be. And so, as Ethan said, I left home. I actually, when I came out, like when I was in high school and all, definitely had really short hair, was really different, didn't really know what was up, and I took a year in between high school and college. I wanted to explore the world a little bit and see what else was out there besides school, and I went and interned at a place called the Highlander Center in Eastern Tennessee, and all of a sudden I was in this place still in the mountains, only 3 hours from home, but I was around all these gay people. There were a bunch of gay people on staff, a lot of queer folks, and they took me for my first drag show, and of course I lied and said I'd been to one before, and my mind was blown. But at the same time, being able to still be within somewhat of a comfortable space within the mountains, within, to me, the Appalachian region, it was really unique. The drag show was full of country singers, people imitating Dolly Parton and Loretta Lynn. It wasn't, some urban thing that I couldn't really feel or didn't connect to as well. But I guess, I then went to Massachusetts to college at a school called Hampshire. And this school, even though it's located in a somewhat rural area in western Massachusetts, is full of a lot of urban people, a lot of folks from New York and Philly and Boston and the Bay. And I think what's really interesting about Hampshire is that it's really progressive and political and oriented around social justice, but I really had this intense internal struggle, right? Not only around being country and being in a student body that was full of urban students, but also of identifying with a queerness and a different sexual identity that, as Lou was talking about, wasn't represented in the other queers on my campus, right? That this idea to them that I was going to go back home after school was like terrifying, and they were like, why would you do that, right? Why would you go back home? Why, weren't you ostracized? Weren't you beaten? Weren't you, like all of these ideas of what being gay in a rural area looked like, and for me it was not my reality. Of course, people get made fun of in school, but I never felt like people were leaving me out of things, right? But at the same time, being at a school like Hampshire, being able to be in this new world gave me a huge different theoretical framework for what it meant to be Appalachian, what it meant to be queer, and what these kind of identity politics look like on the ground and within our larger power structure of society, right? And so I don't want to get too academic and too crazy because I don't normally like to be that person, but being at a college campus, being in a situation where we're really talking about queerness, I really just wanted to bring up some things around how queer theory has been looked at, how sexuality has been looked at, and kind of how power dynamics within that have sprung up. And so I don't know how many people, I know women's and gender studies can sometimes talk about this, but not always. I don't know how many people are familiar with just queer theory as a whole. But the word queer, yes, can be an umbrella term for lesbian, bi, gay, trans folks. It can be this overarching community term that's just quicker than saying all the little acronyms that we have now. But it also is a word that's really talking about the flip side of the norm, the flip side of normativity. What is the other? What is the difference? What does it mean to queer something, right? It means that you are taking something that has power and has a norm that's supported by our institutions, but also in our one-on-one interactions, right? That even if there are larger institutions that hold power, say within heteronormativity, right? There's the institution of marriage and sometimes churches that want to support that, right? And yet at the same time, we have relationships to each other. And so heteronormativity can get played out between me and John. Even if we're both gay, we can still have heteronormative actions within us, right? And thoughts and values around that. And so as I think I specifically want to talk about sexuality and, I think to me this larger lens of how gender and sexuality are getting played out. But sexuality is something that's always been really studied in a scientific way. Most of what you all might be studying here is how kind of people got put into mental institutions or seen as the other because of whatever sexual activity they were partaking in. But there's a French theorist named Foucault who really started talking about the way that sexuality started to function. And he, I can't get to see you, but I love you. Be careful. I'm sorry, y'all. He really started talking about the way that actually sexuality was used as a way to name sex, right, and our gender. And so I just wanted to read a little bit from him. And so he said, "We must not place sex on the side of reality and sexuality on that of confused ideas and illusions. Sexuality is a very real historic formation, is what actually gave rise to the notion of sex as a speculative element necessary to its operation." So, he was really talking about the fact that as people tried to think about sexuality and police it as something that's only about reproduction, only about religion, that's when sex started to get named. That's when people's organs started to be examined and put into these boxes of if you're male, you should be this, and if you're female, you should be this, right? And so that's when it actually started really happening, right? And then he said, it is the agency of sex that we must break away from if we aim to counter the grips of power with the claims of bodies, pleasures, and knowledges in their multiplicity and their possibility of resistance. The rallying point for the counter-attack against the deployment of sexuality ought not to be sex desire, but instead of bodies and pleasure. And so I think, I just really wanted to bring in this idea, right, that if we talk about liberation on multiple fronts, but specifically queer liberation, sexual liberation, kind of the acceptance of who we all are, that we are really talking about people's the acceptance of multiple bodies and multiple pleasures, right? That is not this, you are gay and I'm going to accept you as a gay person, and that you are a lesbian, I'm going to accept you as a lesbian person, that you are a same-sex loving person, but that you have a body and you have pleasures that you seek out, and that's what I'm accepting, right? That we all have bodies and we all have pleasures and we all seek those out in the ways that we want to. And that, anyway, I just really wanted to bring in more of a fuller picture of that yes, sexual identity and gender identity are all really important things to name and claim, and yet there is also this fluidity, right? And this importance for us to all remember that everyone has a sexuality, everyone has a sex, everyone has a gender, and that we have to honor those bodies and pleasures, and not just what's either under our clothes or who we have sex with. So that, for me was just a lot around growing up where I was from, right? That it wasn't that they were looking at me as Ada, as a girl that's gay. It was, I'm Ada, right? I'm this person, and I carry out in the ways that I do, right? That was all formed from being in the small community that I grew up in. So sorry to get too crazy, but I appreciate y'all's time.